Hello everyone! In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do the Italian tubular bind-off. Let's go! As you can see, I've already prepared a little sweater and I added already my tiny little neckband to my mini sweater. I'm actually at that point where I just would cast off all my stitches and I would be ready to go. But for the Italian tubular bind-off, we need 2 extra rows, 2 setup rows in order to start our cast off. Actually, I'm just going to show you close up. So this is the beginning of the new round. And usually when I'm knitting like small circumferences, I'm using the magic loop technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare my circulars for the magic loop technique. I split my work in half and I'm pulling out a loop of my circulars like this, a little cable. Okay. Put my stitches on the needle. Okay, and I'm ready to go. I'm just going to put a little swatch underneath so you can see better what I'm doing. Okay, we prepared for a magic loop. I am picking up my yarn. Before we actually bind off our stitches, we have to do 2 setup rows. And this is how it's done. Okay. The pattern we established is like a knit 1, purl 1. So we're going to bind off the stitches in this pattern. Okay, the first setup round goes like this. We knit all knit stitches and we slip all purl stitches with yarn in front. And I show you what that means. Okay, this is my working needle. Usually in some patterns they tell you you should use a smaller size needle for the setup rows. I usually don't do it just because I want that stretchiness. And if I'm going to use a smaller needle, sometimes it looks maybe a little bit neater, but I'm losing a lot of the stretchiness. So usually what I do, I'm using the same size needle as I was knitting my neckband. Okay, so the knit stitches we knit and the purl stitches we slip as if to purl. Okay, I insert my needle and just slip the stitch. I leave the yarn in front of the stitch because this little piece of yarn is going to disappear in between. That's why it's called tubular, because it creates a tiny little tube and this strand is going to be hidden inside that tube. I'm going to show you later that you can imagine what I'm doing, but this is the very beginning. Okay, the next stitch is a knit stitch. I'm going to knit it. Next stitch, gonna slip it, slip the stitch off the needle, yarn to the back, knit the next stitch, slip the next stitch. This is very important. Sometimes, as you can see, I've knitted this little sweater in fisherman's rib, and when you're doing fisherman's rib, you create a yarn over, and sometimes happens to me, you're watching TV and here you go and you're so used to the yarn overs. This is one thing you don't want to do. So always be aware you don't create a yarn over. You just put the yarn in front of the stitch. I'm just gonna zoom in a little more. So, okay, now here we go. Full on HD. Okay, the next stitch I knit. Next stitch I slip with the yarn in front, bring the yarn to the back and knit the next stitch. slip the yarn with the yarn in front, knit the next stitch, slip the yarn to the back, knit the next stitch, slip with yarn in front, knit the next stitch, slip the stitch as if to purl, yarn in front, knit, slip, yarn in front, knit. This is quite easy, and it's basically the same way as if you would use the Italian tubular bind-off on a flat piece of knitting. You know, like this is a flat knitting, we are knitting back and forth. We're doing the same thing, but the key is the second round. I'm just gonna finish this round. I'm just gonna show you how to do the magic loop. Knit, slip the next stitch, yarn in front, and knit. You prepare for your magic loop. Turn the work around. Slip the stitches to my needle. Pick up the working yarn. Pull the needle. And then we're ready to go. Next stitch, slip with yarn in front. Knit the next stitch, yarn in front. And I'm just gonna repeat the same pattern until I reach my marker for the beginning of the round, and I'll see you there. Okay, I'm back at the beginning of the round at my marker, and the last stitch on my needle is a purl with the yarn in front. So now I'm just gonna prepare my magic loop. Put the stitches in the left hand needle. Pull my working needle through. And always remember, keep that yarn in front. You don't want to accidentally make a yarn over, so keep it in front. Next round, we're going to reverse our pattern, and we're gonna slip the knit stitches as if to purl, but we leave the yarn in the back. This is very important because we don't want to have the yarn in front and we would see it in the end, and that's not what we want. Okay, so yarn in the back, insert your right hand needle as if to purl, take the stitch off the left needle, the work is still behind, then I'm just taking my yarn to the front because the next stitch it's a purl. I'm going to purl that stitch. And as you can see here, this is the little yarn when we slip the stitch with the yarn in front. So it's going to be in between those two stitches. Okay, the next stitch, knit stitch, going to slip it as if to knit, but yarn behind the stitch. Yarn in front, we're going to purl the stitch. The next stitch, slip as if to purl from the left needle, yarn is in the back, bring it to the front, purl the next stitch. I'm gonna create a nice, okay, next stitch, insert as if to purl, slip it from the left needle, the yarn is in the back, and now you can see this is the yarn from last round. Okay, bring the yarn in front and purl the stitch. Slip, yarn in the back, purl next stitch. Slip next stitch as if to purl. It's a knit stitch, leave yarn in the back. Purl, slip, purl. Slip knit stitch with yarn in back and purl next stitch. And now you're going to continue to slip the knit stitch with the yarn in the back and purl the purl. And I'm going to see you back at the marker. Okay, I'm back at the beginning. And this is how it looks like. Now you can see how these stitches pair up a little bit and it might look a bit stiff, but believe me, this is not going to stay like this. Now begins actually the fun part. This was just the preparation, 2 preparation rounds. Remember, first round, knit the knits, slip the purls, yarn in front. Second round, slip the knits, yarn in back, purl the purls. This is what we've done so far. Now we have to, this is actually my way of doing it. A lot of people, they start from right here because actually you're not going to bind off the stitches the way you're used to when you do this kind of a bind off. You actually have to sew off with a darning or a tapestry needle. We have to sew off the stitches. And in order to do this, we have to go manually through all the stitches. Some people do it like this. They leave the stitches on one needle. And honestly, this is driving me really crazy because the moment you get lost, you're lost forever. So I'm going to show you how I do it. And this involves a second circular needle. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm using a different pair needle with a red cable, so you definitely see what's going on. It's quite important, this knitting needle in the beginning, this gives you the gauge for all your stitches. Now what we're going to do is we're going to separate the knit stitches from the purl stitches. The knit stitches go on one needle and the purl stitches go on the second needle. So if you're using the second needle, it's not important that you're using the same size. It should never be bigger than the size you're actually using it, but it can be a bit smaller. So don't sweat it, get a second pair of needles, and here we go, and this is how it's done. I'm just we'll still keep on using the magic loop technique. So I'm going to pull my needle through. And in order to pull the yarn through, we have to break the yarn. So usually what I'm estimating, because we definitely want to have enough yarn to finish this. So I estimate my yarn like 3 times the length from whatever you're binding off. Might be the circumference of your wrist or whatever. 3 times the length of it should be sufficient. Okay, so first I'm going to measure this 3 times, around 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, now I'm able to break the yarn, and this should be enough. Now I need my tapestry needle. I'm gonna thread it through. Pull the yarn through, and I put it aside. Because now this is my special technique how I do it. taking my second needle. So now you have to decide which is which. I'm going to use the blue needle for my knit stitches, and I'm going to use my red needles for the purl stitches. So, okay, first stitch on my needle, that is a knit stitch. I'm taking my blue needle and just take this stitch off as if to purl. I'm not changing anything. I don't switch the stitches around. I'm just taking them as they are. And this is my blue needle. Take off the knit stitch. I hold on tight to my needle because you don't want to lose it. I'm going to take my second needle, go in on the back of the stitch, so it's a purl stitch, slip it as if to purl, and take it off the needle. Okay, now I have a knit stitch and a purl stitch. The next stitch is a knit stitch, so I'm using my blue needle, the tip of my blue needle, and slip it as if to purl. The needle on the back is going to take care of the purl stitch. I insert my needle tip as if to purl, and I take this stitch off. Next stitch would be a knit stitch. I'm going through, take it off. And as you can see, from now it's going to create like a little pattern. One and the other needle. And it's quite important, or it's actually super important, that you always use the right needle, because otherwise you're going to mix it up. And I'm showing you now what that means, because now we are creating one side and another side, and this is the tubular, in Italian, tubular bind-off, because this is going to create a little tube, and it's actually hollow, and in the end we're just gonna connect using Kitchener stitch, and we're closing this gap, and this gives us this beautiful round edge. Okay, so keep on working. Last stitch was a knit stitch, next a purl, knit and purl, knit and purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. See, it's almost fun to do this because it's quite quick. Okay, now we reached the point where we're going to split the needle again. Okay, now I turn my work. I have to organize my needles again. This is my red needle. This is my blue needle. And these are the stitches that are still left on my needle. So push the stitches back to the tip of the work, pull both cable through. Now I have to remember, blue is for the knit stitches, red is for the purls. Okay, now I'm going to continue. I have to be careful with the first stitches. I have to take my blue needle, take off the knit stitch, hold on to the blue needle, take off the purl stitch. Okay, now take them like this in my hand, put the thumb on top of it, and here we go. Knit stitch or purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Always making sure you You don't pierce the yarn, you're really going through the stitch, as you can see, and take it off. Take it off. And you don't want to turn its orientation, you just want to leave it the way it is. Okay. Like you're just transferring the stitches without working them. The purl stitch, knit, and purl, knit, and purl, knit, purl, knit. And we're almost there at the beginning. And then we're ready to bind the stitches off. Okay, here we go. The last knit stitch and the final purl stitch. And we're back where we started, and this is our working yarn. Because we didn't use the yarn, we just transferred the stitches. So the yarn is waiting for us at the beginning of the round. So now we have to organize ourselves. We are back at the magic loop beginning. We're pulling carefully the stitches to the front. These are all the purl stitches. We slide them to the tip of the needle, and the blue cable is for all the knit stitches. We slide them to the front tip. And now we are ready to release the stitches on the back. Just gonna pull them through. We're still leaving the loop, but we put them aside. So now, here comes the fun. We need our tapestry needle. The yarn is already through, and here we go. As I told you in the beginning, we don't knit them, we have to sew them off. And there's a pattern, and the pattern is the same pattern as for Kitchener stitch. The first thing, let me tell you, each stitch has to be worked twice. You don't take a stitch off if you didn't go through it from one side and the other side 2 times. Once like as if to purl and once as if to knit. And then you're ready to take the stitches off. In the beginning, we just transferred the stitches. Now we have to anchor the stitches, and this is a knit stitch, and in the back we have, looks like a purl. Of course, if you turn it around, it's a knit also, but we treat this as a knit stitch and the stitch on the back needle as a purl stitch. In the very beginning, we have to anchor the stitches, and we do this, the knit stitch, we always anchor as if to purl. So, this is what I do. I go from right to left through the stitch as if to purl, and I pull on the yarn and pull it through, being careful that you don't make any knots or you create a yarn over. You don't want to do this. Be careful. Just pull it through the stitch, but don't create a yarn over. Then I'm going to bring my yarn around to the back. And this is a purl stitch, at least from our perspective. We have to anchor the purl stitches always as if to knit. So this is what I'm going to do. I bring the yarn to the middle, so I don't accidentally create a yarn over. Go from left to right through that stitch on the back needle as if to knit. I'm going through and pull the yarn through as if to knit. Okay, now we're safe. Both stitches are anchored. Now our pattern begins. Then on the next step, we're gonna enter the stitch again for the second time, and that means after we complied, we can take the stitch off the needle. And this is, remember, a knit stitch. And you always allowed to take a knit stitch off the needle if you passed it as if to knit. Okay, so I'm going to enter my needle as if to knit from left to right, and I pull the yarn through. So being careful you don't get stuck anywhere or the yarn curls up. So I pull it through as if to knit. And this stitch is ready to leave the needle. So I'm just going to push the needle tip back and I'm taking off this stitch. I'm going to kind of, I tug a little bit, just like this, very carefully, because we don't want to do it too tight in the beginning. So now we are back at the beginning. The next stitch on the front needle is another knit stitch. And remember, we always have to anchor a stitch that hasn't been worked yet. So it's a knit stitch. We're going to anchor it as if to purl. I'm going to pull my yarn through as if to purl, carefully, not to create a yarn over. As you can see, pull it through and it's safe. Now we're ready to go to the back. We already went through this back stitch once as if to knit, to anchor it, remember? Now this stitch is ready to be taken off the needle. So in order to take the purl stitch on the back, we have to go as if to purl, pull the yarn through and push it off the needle. Just tug a little bit and we have to anchor the next stitch. And remember, this is a purl, so we have to anchor it as if to knit. So from left to right, pull my needle through, pull the yarn through, and the stitch is anchored. We're going back to the front needle. This stitch has been worked already once, so it's ready to be taken off the needle, and it's a knit stitch. So I go through the stitch from left to right as if to knit. Pull the yarn, and then I have to anchor the next stitch on the front needle. It's a knit stitch. I anchor as if to purl. So from right to left, pull my yarn through, and I'm ready to go to the back needle. I passed its stitch already once, so now I want to take it off. It's a purl stitch, and I can take it off if I go through the stitch as if to purl from right to left, put my needle through, pull the yarn through carefully, and now I'm able to take the stitch off the needle. Pull the yarn, not too tight, just a little bit so it doesn't create a loop. And if you look at it, you can see it already creates these beautiful stitches. It's actually going to take you a little while to realize how tight you have to pull, but I promise you, try this on your on every gauge swatch you're knitting, add a couple of rows and then try it, and you'll see, okay, this is how hard I have to pull. I think it's in the feeling. You know, we knitters, we have everything in our hands. Okay, let's go on. Okay, we just took the stitch off the needle and we have to anchor the stitch on the back. And you see, we didn't pass it yet. So I have to anchor it as if to knit. I'm coming from the left to the right, pull my yarn through. Okay, and now I'm ready to move to the needle in front. Okay, I worked this stitch already. You can see the yarn has been pulled through already one time. I anchored it. So it's ready to be taken off the needle. And how do I do it? I go through as if to knit, pull the yarn through and take it off the needle. Next stitch on the front needle. I have to anchor it as if to purl, pull the yarn through, and the stitch is safe. Now I can move to the back and take off the first stitch on the back needle because I passed the yarn through already once. And if you look closely, this stitch is safe because I pulled the yarn through. And this is the next stitch on the needle, so you can see this has to go off. Okay, and how do we do that? It's a purl stitch, so we have to pass it like a purl, as if to purl from right to left. Pull the yarn through and take it off that needle. Next stitch on the back needle, anchor it as if to knit because it's a purl stitch. Pull the yarn through and take it off the needle. Oh no, sorry, we don't. See, this is when you don't pay attention. I anchored the stitch, so I'm not allowed to take it off yet. And you can see when you hold it, sometimes you really have to look at it because sometimes you have to go to the phone and then you're like, oh my God, where was I? So you always check your work. Okay, this stitch I just passed. Okay, just once, so it's not ready to be taken off. And the next stitch, that's this one on the front. Okay, so I'm going to the front. It's been anchored. I'm going through as if to knit in order to take it off the needle. Here you go. Next, on the front needle, I have to anchor the stitch as if to purl, pull it through, safe. Now I'm ready to go back and take the next stitch off as if to purl because it's the purl stitch. Okay, put it through and take it off the needle. Next stitch, I have to anchor as if to knit and pull the yarn through. And now you can see there's a pattern. There's always a stitch. We're moving now to the front needle. There's always a stitch in front when you move your yarn to the next needle that you could take off, and then you anchor the next stitch and then you're ready to move to the back needle. Okay, so this stitch is ready to be taken off. Go through as if to knit and take it off. Pull the yarn and then anchor the next stitch. Okay, now we have to go to the back and the next stitch is ready for takeoff. Okay, and it's a purl, so I go in there as if to purl and take it off. And as I said, next stitch, save. Okay, as if to knit, stitch is safe. I'm ready to go to the front. This stitch already has been passed, you can see. Okay, pull it through as if to knit, and then I can take it off and save as if to purl the next stitch. So it's always one stitch you can take off and the next stitch you have to save. Then you switch again. One stitch take off and one stitch save. And then you can switch the needle again. I saved this stitch as if to purl. I'm ready to go back. Purl as if to purl. Stitch can go off the needle. Save as if to knit. and knit the front and take it off. Pull the yarn. Now you can really see it. Like you always have to pull the yarn to get the same gauge as you knitted when you knitted all these stitches. Can you see? So when you turn it, it has the same gauge. So you later on, you still, if you, let's say you pulled it too tight, you're still able with your needle to loosen up a little bit. So don't worry, just give it a try and I think you'll get the hang of it pretty soon. Okay, next stitch, you guessed it, I have to anchor it as if to purl. Next stitch is ready, as if to purl, take it off and anchor the next stitch. So it's a knit, front needle, so it's a knit, take off, it's a purl, save, purl, take off, save, as knit, and on the other needle, save. Now you take off, save the next stitch as if to purl, purl the next stitch, take off. Okay, from now on I call this action knit and purl. So when I say next stitch purl, I mean go through with your needle as if to purl. And if I say knit, it means go through as if to knit. So it's much easier. I don't have to repeat it and you know exactly what I mean. Okay, now we're ready. Next stitch, the purl stitch on the back, knit, save. Next stitch in front, knit, take off, pull yarn, purl in next stitch, purl in back, take off, knit in back, save the stitch, knit in front, take off, pull yarn. Okay, purl, stitch in front, save the stitch, purl, stitch in back, take off. Okay, this creates a mantra. Okay, knit, saves the stitch, knit in front, take stitch off. Okay, now we only have one stitch in front and 2 stitches on the back needle. I'm kind of trying to come in a little bit more close. So, okay. That's an unworked stitch yet. We have, because we just took off the stitch, knit stitch. You can see because when I'm putting here, you still see it's attached. Okay, next stitch, you guessed it, purl, stitch is safe. Going to the back needle, purl, take stitch off the needle. Okay, and now we are ready for our magic loop. I leave both stitches on the needle, but remember, we saved this, we took this stitch off. Now we have to save the last stitch as if to knit. And now we could take this stitch off, but I don't do it because I want to be safe. So I'm just pulling my needles through. Can you see that? Okay. Turn my work. Super close up. Organize my yarn and my needles. Pull the needles back. Push all stitches to the tip of the needle on the back and on the front. Now we have to remember our last step. Okay. As you remember, I saved the last stitch with a knit stitch. Now this stitch in front is ready to be taken off. I go in there as if to knit and I take it off. Okay, pull the yarn and here we go again. Anchor the stitch in front as if to purl. Purl in the back means take it off. Next stitch in the back, save the stitch. Okay. Knit in front, take off the stitch in front. Rearrange everything. Okay. Purl, anchor, purl, take off in the back, knit in the back, knit in front, take it off, save stitch on the front as if to purl. Now you realize we have these two options and we know exactly where we are. Now can you imagine if all stitches were on one needle? I think you go crazy. After, let's say you have 300 stitches on your needle and you have a small gauge, I think you just want to throw it in the corner and never ever touch it again. And I think that's the main thing with all techniques. Get organized, stay cool, take your time, don't get bothered by anybody, don't watch TV in the beginning, be focused, and then nothing can happen. And try, because try on all your swatches, because sometimes you buy this beautiful yarn, you don't have a project yet, you knit a gauge swatch and just try to create a nice bind-off, a nice cast on. It's a beautiful swatch. Write everything down, what needle size you were using, and whenever you want to pick up that yarn, you found that special project, you have that beautiful gauge swatch, and you're just happy to go on. I think we have to sometimes create little stories to keep us going and get us into the mood, and don't think of anything that is not knitting, like let's say closing side seams or whatever. it's just a dreadful thing. No, it's not. It's just part of our hobby. It's part of knitting, and the more techniques we know, the stronger we are, and we're ready to choose whatever we want. You know, we're not depending on any designers coming from a designer, but we're not depending on it. We can change things around the way we want it. We can, I don't know, whatever. You're free, and enjoy that freedom. So, okay, and with this in mind, let's go ahead. Okay, we saved that stitch, anchored that stitch on the front needle, and that means we purl the next stitch and take it off the needle. Take it off, anchor as if to purl. Don't create a yarn over, as if to purl, as if to knit. And now front needle, knit, take it off. Anchor the stitch, as if to purl, purl in the back, ready to take off. Anchor, purl, knit. Sorry that I'm confusing you. Okay, anchor, knit, knit, take the stitch off, pull the yarn, anchor as if to purl, purl, take off. Always remember, the stitches in the front, the knit stitches, you can take off whenever you knit them. You anchor the stitches in front whenever you purl them. And the opposite is true for the back needle. You take the stitches off when you purl them, and you anchor the stitches whenever you knit them. And when I say knit and purl, you know, pull the yarn through as if to knit and pull the yarn through as if to purl. Okay? Okay, here we go. Anchor stitch, knitwise, take off knitwise on the front. Okay. Save as if to purl and take off as if to purl. The pattern is always like in a zigzag, you know. I'll show you, like in a zigzag from one needle to the other. So you take off and you save or anchor. Okay. Now where are we? We have to save the next stitch on the back needle as if to knit and take it off as if to knit. Anchor, purl, purl, take off. Okay. Save as if to knit, knit, and you take off the front stitch. Anchor the next stitch with the if to purl, purl, and take off. Anchor, knit, knit, take off, pull yarn. Now you can really see how beautiful this is. And knit, purl, as if to purl from right to left, and purl, and take it off. It's like, how many times can you say purl or knit until you slip your tongue? Okay, save, as if to knit, and knit, and let go of the front needle. Yay. Okay, save, and this is almost the end, and now we know what we're doing, and there's an end inside, and take it off. Okay, save, knit, knit, and take it off. Pull. It's actually quite satisfying when you pull it and it kind of moves in place. It's really beautiful. Okay, purl, save, purl, take off. Next stitch, save, knitwise, take off in front, knitwise. Okay, almost close to the end. Save, purl, purl off the needle, save, knit, knit off the needle, pull, and save, purl off the needle, almost there, and save as to knit, and save as to knit from off the needle. Anchor, and take it off. And I think it's a good thing that I do it so many times, because I remember when I did it the first time and I had this super short video and I was like, oh no, what is she doing? What's she doing? I have to rewind it and then start from the beginning. And it was so annoying. So excuse me for taking really my time, but I think once you're at it and you really appreciate what I'm doing, otherwise you just skip forward. Okay? Okay. Anchor as if to knit on the back needle and take it off the needle as if to knit, and yay, anchor, take off. Okay, and now we really enjoy it because we're almost there. Save the stitch, anchor it as if to knit, knit, take it off. Okay, I think now we have showdown. Okay, I took off the knit stitch, I anchor the front stitch, go to the back needle, and please keep hold on tight to your needles because they might pull and you might lose them. Okay, I anchored the stitch in front, I purl the stitch on the back needle, take it off. Okay, I'm going to anchor the stitch on the back needle as if to knit, hold tight. The front stitch now is ready to take off, pull the yarn through as if to knit, release the blue needle. Okay. And now here we go. There's only one stitch left on our needle. What do we do? How do we get this one off? Okay, usually we had another stitch in the front needle to anchor as if to purl, and then we would purl this one and release that stitch. Okay, now we're at the end of the round or beginning of the round, as you can see. And this is what you do. You're going to look for the first stitch that we bound off. And now we have to close for the round. And I'm going in, you see, this is the knit stitch, the V. And I'm going in with my needle in the little V in the front leg of that one stitch, and this is actually the first stitch that we bound off. Okay, I'm going in there to anchor it. We would anchor it if it would be still on our needle. I go in as if to purl, you guessed it, pull the yarn through, and now I'm going to my back needle and pull my yarn through as if to purl, and this gives me the opportunity to release my red needle. And now we are ready. You made it. And I pulled the yarn through and we closed it. So now we turn the work around. Now we have to get rid of the final thread. And this is again what I always call my, how do I call it? My play it by ear or play it by eye, because I look at it and try to find a perfect way to get rid of my stitch, my last stitch. So you see there is still a little loop, and this loop has to go somewhere. Okay, and it looks best if it goes this way. Okay, this would be perfect. So it moves in like this. And how do we do this? Okay, I have to pull it to the right. Now I'm looking for the leg of the stitch next to it. I enter that stitch, pull the yarn through, and now you can see moved this way. Now we have to, because that is the beauty of the tubular, as in Italian tubular bind-off. There's a little tube in here, and as you can see, it even hides my needle within. So we're going to use this to our advantage, and we hide the yarn in there. Okay, I look at it, and I think I want to go on the opposite side, put the yarn through, pull it through, okay, pull it through, pull it tight, and this looks really beautifully now. Even this one is like a beautiful round stitch. And now I'm just gonna dive into that little tube, trying go inside this little V, and I'm saying goodbye to the outside world, and I'm going underground in this little tunnel. Just gonna work my way, being careful that I don't stick out on the opposite side and not on this side. So I'm really using this little tunnel. As you can see, kind of move it, let's say, for over 2 inches. Pull the yarn through completely. Ta-da! Gone forever. Now we don't even see where we began the whole thing. And now this is one of my favorite things. I started doing it when I got into Fair Isle knitting, and you know, it's a hassle to weave in all the ends, and Fair Isle always benefits from 100% lamb's wool because it felts. So this is something, if you want to ever knit Fair Isle, Shetland wool, any kind of rough wool is your best friend. This sample, for this sample, I used merino wool, 100%. So as you know, when you wash it too hot, it's going to felt. And felting is your best friend sometimes. And for me, felting is a good friend whenever I cut my threads. And what I do, I take a clipper, a yarn clipper, or you can use your scissors, and I do like this. I open up my scissors, my yarn clipper, and I don't push it through. I just start like teasing the wool. Can you see this? How it kind of loosens up. It's feathering the wool. And I keep on doing this a couple of times because I really want to kind like backcomb it or tease it like a hairdo, you know, like in the 80s. And I tease it and I tease it and I tease it and I tease it and I really take my time and I tease it and I tease it. And here we go. Now the yarn's breaking. And now you see what happened? It got all frizzy. All the little fibers kind of exploding in each direction. What's happening? When I now pull on it, this is going to disappear in here. And I bet you this thing is going to felt inside this little tube and you will never see it again. Okay? So I pull it and here we go. It's gone forever. Now let's see our progress. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, here we go. And come on, be honest. Isn't this the most beautiful ever? Every time I do it, I'm every time so satisfied when I see this. Makes me really happy. And now I'm really happy that I told you how to do it and you have to promise me to try it. I turn the work around so we see the other side. Okay, this is the inside. This is the beauty of this, the whole concept, the whole neckband is really, really special because as you see, you can use it from the inside out. It always looks stunning. If you want to know how to get this done here, this inside, my double-edged, I don't even know how to call it, go check out, there's a video how to do the perfect neckband. I made a whole video about it and the only thing that's missing in the video is how to bind off those stitches the Italian way. And I think this is really beautiful. I leave you with a lot of pressure to try it. And if you like this video, please hit a like, subscribe. Go and check out my Instagram, Sasha Knits. There's also a lot of things going on there. And if you like to try this method, I have many patterns designed by me in my Ravelry store. Go check out the store. Check out everything. Actually, all my patterns are in German and in English. And each pattern, whenever you buy a pattern, there's a link in the pattern and it takes you straight to the YouTube video tutorials and you're never left alone with anything in the pattern. Okay, so have fun and leave in the comments how you like my little tutorial. Okay,